Hey, hey, hey. So I am here with a new episode, and I know it's been a while, but I believe that this is going to officially be season 2 of the She Speaks podcast. And I can say that this season is definitely going to have a theme. As I am working on some content for something else that will come out later, there's some things that as I'm writing, I am having to edit, filter, make the choice of if I'm going to remove or leave some of my authenticity in this work. But as I sit here in this moment and I'm reading about the younger Ladisha, the 14, 15, 16-year-old Ladisha, and it has amazed me that I've forgotten about this little girl. I've forgotten about this teenager. Because life has gone on, and I decided that I didn't want to just write about this because I feel like for the first time I can give her the voice that she deserves, but I can also give her a voice from a now healed perspective that I did not have then, when I was living in the filth, when I was living in the toxic home and environment, when I was angry, when I was bitter, when there was strife and resentment and just all the things that were ugly, all the things that darkness presented at that time in my life. And I'm reading over me as a daughter, what it felt like to be inside of a home and an environment that I had absolutely no control over. So I thought. Because it was in these years that pushed me to seek God for myself for the first time. And I don't know how many times I've shared this openly, but as I've been writing, I realize that God has been in the beginning of my story, well before I was able to trace his footsteps. But looking back now, I'm able to see his love for me. Looking back now, I'm able to see his protection for me. And it was as though Jesus himself introduced himself to me before I ever knew that I was broken. And he didn't meet me at a church. He met me at an elementary school. He met me in a program. And I don't know what was said, and I don't know the words. I don't know what was going on at the time. But I remember that when it was presented to me, when the question was asked of who wanted to accept Jesus in their heart, that little girl said yes. And I was between the 3rd and possibly the 5th grade. So that would have put me between 8 and 10 years of age. And I remember after school sitting at a cafeteria table, and I don't know if it was in the cafeteria or if it was in our gym because we alternated locations. But I remember sitting with the lady who just so happened to have been one of my mom's elementary teachers, and she was retired at this time. But she was the one who instructed me on how to pray the salvation prayer. And as I grew older, I wondered, when I would go to church, did it count when I did it? I know today that I fully accepted Jesus Christ into my heart. I may not have understood then exactly what that meant, but looking back now, knowing that 8 to 10-year-old girl said yes to Christ when I didn't even really know who I was saying yes to or what that would mean for my future. It was just a couple of years later that I found myself having to go remembering this name, Jesus, and asking him why he allowed for me to be on the earth, why he allowed for me to have breath in my body. I remember that 13-year-old girl crying in my bedroom corner, asking, is there more to my life than this? Is there more than the pain and the trauma and the turmoil? Is there more than the fussing and the fighting? Is there more to life? Or was I created simply to endure pain? And I believed, because I think I believed because I needed to. My hope was the only thing that was keeping me alive. Suicide was a thought. But common sense came in and said, that's going to hurt, LaDisha, if you cut your wrists, because that's what the movies had on TV at the time. And I couldn't be like the Lifetime and the LMN teenagers, because I said, I don't know how long it's going to take for them to find me, and I may not be able to make it. So Logix kept me alive. And I don't think I really wanted to die. I just didn't want to be where I was at the time. And as I sit here and I go over my story, and as I look at the words that I wrote on the pages months ago, I'm in awe, because I read that I didn't understand what my state of mind was. I didn't understand how I was making it. I didn't understand how I was coping. And it makes me understand just how strong that little girl had to be. How much conversation she had to have with herself to keep herself grounded as best as she knew how. But I also look at darkness pushed me into the hands of a loving Father. And I had absolutely no idea or clear depiction if the Lord was ever going to respond. But the life that I live today, I know he did. I give him credit when things got worse. I didn't understand at the time. But I look at the series of events that took place, and I look at who I am today, and I can see that God's always been fighting for me. He's always intended for me to belong to him. He's always intended for me to rely on him. And nothing in my background would have ever pointed to me being a daughter of the Most High God. Nothing would have ever pointed to me being who I am today. Nothing about that time said that she would be a beautiful girl, that she would grow to be a beautiful woman. I didn't know that my pain had purpose then. I didn't know that the enemy saw my future. And so therefore he was using everything that he could that was around me. I didn't know that he knew my plan, even though I didn't. And so I decided to come on here today and just to share to two different people. One, I don't really know if I should talk to the mother or the daughter first. Because being who I am, I'm both of those things in one now. There was a time that I was only a daughter, and I would give advice to the mother who may not have been able to see from the viewpoint of the child. But now that I hold both of those titles, I would say to the daughter, sometimes you're not going to understand why the person or the people raising you, why they make the decisions that they make. And sometimes you're not going to ever understand why you had to endure the pain that you have. And you may not understand why you had to be birthed in the situation that you were birthed into. But none of it is by mistake. And if you will allow for the Lord to show you, you too will be able to see that He's always been with you. And just because He walks with you doesn't mean that things are going to be perfect, and it doesn't mean that things are going to be pretty, and it doesn't mean that things are going to be great. It doesn't mean that people won't hurt you. But what it does mean is, in spite of what people do, God can use your story, as jacked up, as messed up as it may seem, and you can still turn out to be a beautiful masterpiece in spite of. And I'll also say this to the child. The gift of healing is a gift that you get to give yourself. It's not something that somebody else can give you. It's not something that you have to ask permission for. You simply have to make a choice to say, I am done hurting. I'm done being a victim. I'm done carrying and owning this pain. I'm choosing a different destiny for myself. And then to the mother, I can say, your child is willing to forgive you. But it is going to take some work. And depending on how old that child is, it may be a little more difficult, and it may seem nearly impossible. But I can say there's grace, and it's sufficient. I can say that you should pray daily to get better. That you should seek to do better. That it is possible to break bad habits if you continue to apply the necessary skills on a daily basis. And to the mother who may have young children and you fear being the exact replica that you received, again, I say grace. It's easy to become a product of our surroundings and our environments, but it doesn't mean that we have to stay that way. And I think the greatest gift is having my daughters and seeing myself attempt to do the work, as difficult as it is. I'm proud at moments because I'm trying. I'm proud because I'm not making excuses. I'm proud because I refuse to give up. I refuse to stay stuck in the patterns of life. And I also refuse to give myself a slap on the wrist or use the common term, I'm doing the best I can, or I did the best I can. because my best today could be better tomorrow. And I may not have did so great last week, but as long as I don't stay stagnant as a parent and I am actively and progressively making an attempt to do better, not all by myself, but with the grace of God, that is what I can take pride in. I can look at my younger self and love her in ways that I needed. I can give her things today that I didn't get back then. And one of the most beautiful gifts is knowing that in me loving my children correctly, in me loving my children well, it's as though I'm loving her too. And so I don't know who's going to listen. I don't know who's going to need it. It could have just been for me. But a part of me wants to label this mother wounds. And that has been a term that has come to me after being at Woman Evolve this year. But I'm not giving that title because of my personal relationship with my mother. I am a mother who is still a little wounded. And I, being a wounded mother, I became a mother with many wounds, with many scars, with many aches, with much trauma, with much abuse that had not been dealt with. It had been neglected. I came with wounds. And so by nature, wounded people can and will naturally wound other people. And I know that over my years of motherhood in this 7 years, I have given my fair share of wounds to my children that were unintentional. But I have to tell the truth and say I am guilty of presenting wounds to little girls that did not deserve them. But again, I'm grateful that I can see myself doing something that breaks the generational cycle and patterns that were passed down to me. And I know that in the years to come, I'll be a better mother. I know that in the years to come, I'll see the benefit of my labor in this season. And I just believe that God's going to do all the more with the pain and the heartache than I could have ever thought, asked, or imagined. And I'm going to share this journey because I think one of the greatest things is that darkness, the enemy, whoever, I'm not even worried about giving credit to that side. They're going to regret choosing me to be their victim. Because the glory that my Father is going to get out of this story, the glory that God is going to get out of my healing, it's going to make it well worth it. That if that was the price, if that was the down payment that was required out of my young life, then I say, thank you, Jesus. And I take away a benefit of that hard childhood. I understood that if young Ladisha was able to survive all of that, then the adult version of me had no excuse. And the young me was thinking that I had to do it all on my own. But the adult me knows, the mother in me knows, I don't fight my own battles. And so weights may come, trials and tribulations may come, but I don't carry those weights on my shoulder like I used to. So the same thing that I did at 13, I can now do at 30. But I don't need a hard situation to push me to a place to cry out to my Father. I'm able to cry out daily. I'm able to think about the goodness of Him. I no longer have to ask Him, what is my purpose? My pain introduced my purpose to me. And because I walked in darkness, I know that my purpose is to let hell know the light is still winning in my life. And it is to present the light of Jesus in many different avenues, in many different rooms. And this podcast is one of them. And so darkness might have thought that it initiated something. But I now know that no, I was not birthed. I was not put in the earth to simply endure pain. But my pain produced my oil. My pain was necessary. I was being crushed. I was being bruised. I was being all of these things. Because God saw how it was going to work out for His good and how it was going to work out for mine. And so the same things that made me cry one day, I can now smile, laugh, and rejoice about. And I can say what the enemy meant for evil, God is and has truly worked it out for my good. And I'm healing. And I'm more wholesome than I've ever been. And I thank God for showing up in Circle Club because He's made a full circle with me. I thank God that we can serve a God who will introduce Himself to a child when they don't even know that they're ever gonna need Him. I thank God because even when I didn't know if He was a God who hears, even when I didn't know that He was a God who sees, He stepped in a way that I was not aware. And I'm here today to say I'm a miracle. I'm here to say that He kept His hands on me. I'm here to say that I am a living and breathing testimony of what an awesome, all-knowing, all-seeing Father will do for His children. Because at one point I was counted as the least of these. And I saw God fight battles that I didn't even know I was in. I saw God take out enemies and I didn't even know that they were enemies. I saw God remove strongholds that presented themselves at a time when I didn't even understand what those were. I saw God be a restorer and a redeemer in this season. And so I'm excited for season 2, episode 1. And I'll figure out what I'm going to title this season. But I can say God did it for me. He introduced Himself to His daughter when she didn't even know that He was real, that He existed. But He put a mother in my life, an older woman in my life who told me about Jesus. And it's funny that her name was Miss Mary, that God put a Mary in my life to introduce me to Jesus. And He's never left my side. And now that I hold on to Him, it doesn't matter if I have His heart. It doesn't matter if I feel like I'm sitting in His lap. It doesn't matter if I feel like I'm barely holding on to the hem of his garment. I know that he's my Father, and I know that I am his. And so if you are joining me for the first time, or maybe you come and you listen to this first episode of this new season, I say and encourage the both of us to buckle up and hold on, because I just believe that for this season, it's going to be a bumpy, honest, transparent, yet beautiful journey.